Yeah, hello, back, friends of the sun. So, we talked about creationism last time, and so far nobody listened to the video, which is fine. Maybe I just recorded for myself. But yeah, I think the ideal is to discuss these theories and that people point out things that I miss. Right now, I'm writing a book about the foundations of the West, but now Jordan Peterson came up with a book that has the same, or like a course that has the same title. So we have to find a new title. Maybe Pillars of Western Civilization, but I feel pillars always sounds so bad. Man, foundations of the Western civilization, that sounds so good. And Darwin is certainly one of them. And that's what I'm researching right now. So I just try to get a general picture of Darwin. I mean, we are all familiar with evolutionary theory, but yeah, what are the details and where do I have to be very careful? And like one thing is that Darwin actually was not necessarily an atheist, as many assume. He still kind of believed in God, but he thought that the evidence he collected was speaking for a certain kind of development of species that cannot be understood through the creation myth. And that was the controversial point because he was attacking once again the church in one of their central doctrines. Now, however, so this is why I have to get more background about him to really understand what he was doing. So, and yeah, here in the first picture, we see the very old Darwin. So he certainly already lived into the age of photography. So let's see here. When was he born? 1809. 1809, that's like 2 years after Hegel published his Phenomenology of Spirit, which already has the idea of an evolving history and a change in the identity of humans. I mean, one really has to think that if humans occurred 90,000 years ago, maybe, let's say 30,000 years as we know them, then the Earth and the societies living on Earth was pretty much the same for a very long time. So these great fundamental changes just occurred like in the last 200 years. And Hegel was one of the first who actually noticed that. And we already see that the development of the concept of history is different from what was history before. Before, history was just recording events that happened, but it was not changing like much of how people understood themselves. Now history becomes part of our identity and it's constantly changing. And Darwin certainly too, as a follower of David Hume, who demanded a science of man, is following in these footsteps, and he is now doing history that is more evidence based. So he was an English naturalist, geologist, and biologist, widely known for his contributions to evolutionary biology. His proposition that all species of life have descended from a common ancestor is now generally accepted and considered a fundamental scientific concept. And I really wonder, like, was it just like one entity that like spawned into being, and that's where we are all from? Probably, right? The genetic code. In a joint publication with Alfred Russel Wallace, he introduced a scientific theory that this branching pattern of evolution resulted from a process he called natural selection, in which the struggle for existence has a similar effect to the artificial selection involved in selective breeding. Darwin has been described as one of the most influential figures in human history and was buried in Westminster Abbey. So yeah, I have to see what Westminster Abbey is. I hear that so often. And by the way, Alfred Russel Wallace, he was definitely interested in Hegel. That's my major topic, right? And he was fascinated by Hegel because like could like he saw in Hegel like reconstructing society as an evolutionary process too. And I'm surprised that Wallace occurs here. I mean, maybe I have another Wallace in mind, but is it Alfred Russel Wallace? Okay, maybe I'm mixing that up with another Wallace. I'm surprised that it was a conjoined publication, Man's Place in the Universe. That's what it says here, right? And that nobody really knows him, right? So why is Darwin famous, but why isn't here? So this may also be an interesting question. Let me ask that ChatGPT. Okay, let's see here. So Darwin is famous primarily because he developed the theory of natural selection and presented it comprehensively in his seminal work on the origin of species. His theory fundamentally changed the understanding of biological evolution and had a profound blah, blah, blah. We already know that. Wallace, on the other hand, also independently conceived the theory of natural selection around the same time as Darwin. However, he's less well known for a few reasons. And yeah, I find that interesting. Can somebody a genius, or should we call somebody a genius, when two people at the same time independently discovered? Then it seems to be historically in the air, right? So timing and context. Darwin's Origin of Species was published first and gained substantial public and scientific attention. Wallace's work came shortly after, and while it was groundbreaking, it didn't receive the same level of immediate acclaim. Darwin's contributions were more extensive and included a broader range of evidence and arguments which helped establish his position as the primary figure in the theory of evolution. Wallace's contributions, while significant, were more focused on specific aspects of biogeography and the evidence for natural selection. Publication and popularization. Darwin's book was not only a scientific breakthrough, but also written in a way that engaged the public. Wallace's work, while influential, did not have the same level of impact. Darwin, moreover, continued to publish and contribute to evolutionary theory throughout his life, which helped cement his status. Wallace, though influential, did not have the same level of sustained public and scientific engagement. Okay, that makes sense. It seems Darwin just contributed way more evidence to that kind of discussion. And then again, I have to check what is Westminster Abbey. Let's find where it opened it. What is Westminster Abbey? Honoring individuals are buried in Westminster Abbey, maybe therefore it's famous. Oh, this year, okay. The church, okay. The church in London. Okay. Yeah, very beautiful. Standard church, maybe no. So Darwin's early interest in nature led him to neglect his medical education at the University of Edinburgh. So this, to me, this is interesting because at the University of Edinburgh also David Hume taught, and they were definitely more interested in empirical science, even though that all originated with the I guess what is it called, Academia of Science in London, or in Cambridge. So, but I think Cambridge became very traditional, which also was annoying Adam Smith very much in the 18th century. Now, I don't know how it was like exactly at the beginning of the 19th century, but it seems that progress was for a certain amount of time made in Edinburgh. And so it's interesting that he studied there. So he neglected his medical education. Instead, he helped to investigate marine invertebrates. His studies at the University of Cambridge, Christ College, that's where also John Locke was, certainly also foundation of its fame. I think Hobbes was also there, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, later Adam Smith also studied there, but he was not impressed anymore, and he returned without a degree to Edinburgh. So, and Edinburgh had also David Hume, right? So he studied there from 1828 to 1831, the year when Hegel died, encouraged his passion for natural science. However, it was his 5-year voyage on the HMS Beagle from 1831 to 1836 that truly established Darwin as an eminent geologist. The observation and theories he developed during his voyage supported Charles Lyell's concept of gradual geological change, Scottish geologist who demonstrated the power of known natural causes in explaining the Earth's history. And again, Scottish, probably from Edinburgh. So publication of his journal of the voyage made Darwin famous as a popular author. Puzzled by the geographical distribution of wildlife and fossils he collected on the voyage, Darwin began detailed investigations and in 1838 devised his theory of natural selection. Although he discussed his ideas with several naturalists, he needed time for extensive research, and geological work had priority. So this is also interesting. He does not just come up with the thesis, he collects evidence. He was writing up his theory in 1858 when Alfred Russel Wallace sent him an essay that described the same idea, prompting the immediate joint submission of both their theories to the Linnean Society of London. So actually what ChatGPT says is a bit wrong because they published it at the same time as a joint publication, right? Is this still famous, the Linnean Society of London? I wonder whether they still publish. I know at that time, I believe they already had the Lancet. Yeah. Learned society dedicated to the study and dissemination of information concerning natural history, evolution, and taxonomy. Formation 236 years ago, it seems they still exist. It's pretty interesting. I wonder what they do. Meetings have been and continue to be the main justification for the society's existence. Meetings are venues for people like interests to exchange information, talk about scientific and literary concerns, exhibit specimen, and listen to lectures. Okay, that's very interesting. I wonder how long they will survive, or whether there's societal evolution. So, although he discussed this idea, well, we had that. Okay, they published it. Darwin's work established evolutionary descent with modification as the dominant scientific explanation of natural diversification. In 1871, he examined human evolution. Here we have this nice picture. Actually, I want to use that later. I guess it's like comparing like other primates with humans, right? And there's this like significant similarity. And sexual selection. Oh, I wonder whether they have a picture. Oh, okay, they have a picture. Sexual selection is a mechanism of evolution in which members of one biological sex choose mates of the sex to mate with and compete with members of the same sex for access to members of the opposite sex. These two forms of selections mean that individuals. Yeah, so that's an interesting question whether this is the same as natural selection, right? In the sense that survival of the fittest. In the descent of man and selection in relation to sex, followed by the expression of the emotions in man and animals, his research on plants was published in a series of books, and in his final book, The Formation of Vegetable Mold Through the Actions of Worms, he examined earthworms. Oh, okay, earthworms. How do we call them in German? Regenwürmer, because they only come out when it rains. So Darwin published his theory of evolution with compelling evidence in his 1859 book on the origin of species. By the 1870s, the scientific community and a majority of educated public had accepted evolution as a fact. Oh, this is an article. I want to see that. However, many initially favored competing explanations that gave only a minor role to natural selection, and it was not until the emergence of modern evolutionary synthesis, I guess when they developed more mathematical models, I also have to look into this, from the 1930s to the 1950s, that a broad consensus developed in which natural selection was the basic mechanism of evolution. Darwin's scientific discovery is the unifying theory of the life sciences explaining the diversity of life. It's interesting that they take that the main push because, yeah, I guess that's what it is. Genetic drift, it seems also to be important, but that seems to be the foundation of the variety that can occur, although they are very specific phenomena. I mean, okay, evolution in terms of natural selection for the emergence of entirely new species, I think that's necessary. that won't happen by genetic drift. But if we have something like music, and somebody comes and wants to explain that by evolutionary theory, this seems to me a bit far-fetched. So I would say maybe that's a result of genetic drift. So yeah, many scientists and philosophers of science have described evolution as a fact and theory, a phrase which was used as the title of an article by paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould, okay, in 1981. He describes fact in science as meaning data not known with absolute certainty but confirmed to such a degree that it would be perverse to withhold provisional assent. That's interesting. Very interesting. It would be perverse to withhold provisional assent. I provisionally assent. And it's also, yeah, that's a good formulation. Scientific theory is a substantiated explanation of such facts. The facts of evolution come from observational evidence of current processes, from imperfections in organisms recording historical common descent, and from transition in the fossil record. Theories of evolution provide a provisional explanation for these facts. I like that they put in their provisional explanation, because the Popper part, you cannot confirm a theory, and you may be vulnerable to a confirmation hypothesis. So, and the weird thing is that most sciences operate on the base of that. So we have to become clear again how we want to treat actually confirmation, which is a tough topic. Well, let's see what else we have. Here's the modern synthesis. So natural selection, variation. What is this? What is this? Malthusian competition, geometric population growth, limited resources. So is that like the one when you have like prey and you have what is the other thing called? Something that is preyed on, that always changes, and that there's always a fight for survival. And then it seems we have variation in the mix. So breeds, races, and subspecies, and they contribute now to something that is natural selection. So then we have here also mutations, small changes in individual characteristics, which lead to genetic variation, alleles of individual genes combining to give continuous variation. And then we have the Mendelian inheritance. I should also look that up. 2 copies of each gene, 1 from each parent. Yeah, so this, like, whether it's dominant or passive, I guess. And then all of these come together, and then we have the modern synthesis. Shouldn't we call that the modern synthesis of evolution theory or something? Like, modern synthesis sounds so weird. Yeah. I want to look into that again. Like, yeah. Not sure if I'm convinced. I mean, I'm convinced that the theory is right, but why do they call it modern synthesis? That's definitely also an article worth to read. Maybe I should read that tomorrow. And we finish here. I like pictures. Pictures say more than 1,000 words. I heard that once. I'm a very sophisticated and educated person. Okay, so what do we have here? Now the picture disappears. Okay. I wanna have the whole one. Come on, upload the whole one. Come on. Oh, come on, don't take so much time. Well, unfortunately, this OBS, OBCD, OBS makes everything a little bit slow. So, okay, we have here like the form of evolution, and I think it's more detailed shown with regard to the legs. So this is, okay, this is an equus, a horse, and it comes from the Pliohippus. I have no idea what I'm talking here. Merychippus, and from the Mesohippus. And it seems they have been once relatively small and got bigger. Evolution, yay. So yeah, before I talk more bullshit, thanks for watching and study more the evolution so you can live long and prosper. Bye bye.